Paris, just past 2 in the morning. A man lies across a table inside the city hall, his jaw shattered by a gunshot, blood soaking into the papers beneath him. No one in the room moves to help him. 24 hours earlier, every soldier here would have died carrying out his orders without hesitation. Tonight, they've come to make sure he doesn't live to see sunrise. His name is Maximilien Robespierre. For 2 years, he held more power over who lived and who died than any king France had overthrown to escape. In a few hours, the machine he built and perfected will be used on him. 3 years earlier, almost no one outside his hometown had heard his name. Maximilien Robespierre was a small, meticulous lawyer from Arras, a provincial town north of Paris. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't a soldier. He didn't have the charisma of a natural leader. What he had was an unshakable belief that the world could be built on virtue instead of privilege, and a discipline that bordered on obsession. When the revolution began in 1789, most of the men who rose to lead it were already compromised. They took bribes. They protected their own wealth while preaching equality. Robespierre did neither. He lived simply. He refused gifts. He turned down positions that would have made him rich. The people of Paris gave him a name that would follow him for the rest of his life: the Incorruptible. By 1793, the revolution he had helped build was under attack from every direction. Foreign armies at the borders, royalist uprisings inside the country, and factions within his own government who wanted him gone. Robespierre came to believe there was only one way to protect what they had built: fear. Not fear of an enemy outside France, fear of anyone, anywhere, who might threaten the revolution from within. Here is the part almost no one wants to accept about Robespierre. He wasn't lying. He genuinely believed everything he said about virtue, equality, and the rights of ordinary people. He believed it more sincerely than almost anyone around him. And that sincerity is exactly what made him dangerous. Psychologist Albert Bandura spent decades studying how ordinary people come to justify extraordinary harm. He called it moral disengagement, the process by which a person convinces themselves that a harmful act isn't just acceptable, but necessary, even righteous. It doesn't require someone to abandon their morals. It requires them to redefine what morality demands. Robespierre didn't wake up one day and decide to become a tyrant. He built the case slowly, one justification at a time. The revolution is fragile. Enemies are everywhere, some hidden in plain sight. If the revolution falls, everything reverts to the old cruelty. Therefore, protecting the revolution by any means is the single most moral act available. In February of 1794, he stood before the National Convention and said the words that would define his legacy far more than any of his original ideals. Terror is nothing more than prompt, severe, and inflexible justice. It is therefore an emanation of virtue, not a necessary evil, not a regrettable compromise, an emanation of virtue itself. This is the mechanism behind nearly every atrocity in human history, carried out by people who believe themselves to be good. Not cartoonish villains, true believers, people utterly convinced they were the ones protecting everyone else. By the spring of 1794, Robespierre's definition of enemy had expanded to include people who had stood beside him since the revolution began. Georges Danton had been a friend, a fellow revolutionary, a man who had risked his own life for the same cause. But Danton had started arguing for mercy, suggesting the killing needed to slow down, that the revolution had achieved what it needed to and could now show restraint. To Robespierre, mercy at the wrong moment wasn't kindness, it was a threat. In April of 1794, Danton was arrested, tried in a proceeding that barely resembled a trial, and sent to the guillotine. Witnesses recorded that as he climbed the scaffold, he turned toward the crowd and shouted a warning that Robespierre would follow him within days. He was right. Almost to the week. This is the part of the story that repeats itself across nearly every revolution, every purge, every regime built on ideological purity. The list of acceptable people only shrinks. It never grows. Today's enemy is the aristocrat. Tomorrow's enemy is the moderate. The day after, the enemy is anyone who once agreed with you, but now hesitates. Robespierre had built a system that ran on suspicion as fuel, and a system built on suspicion cannot simply stop consuming people once its original targets are gone. It needs new targets to justify its own existence. By July of 1794, the only reliable way to stay safe from the guillotine was to accuse someone else before they accused you. Nobody, including Robespierre, was exempt from the logic he had built. On the 8th of Thermidor, by the revolutionary calendar, Robespierre stood before the National Convention and gave a speech warning of conspirators inside the government itself. He named no one directly. He implied everyone. It was meant to be a show of strength. Instead, it became his execution warrant. Every representative in that room had spent the last year watching colleagues disappear over smaller accusations than the one Robespierre had just leveled against the room itself. If he could not, or would not, name his enemies specifically, then anyone present might be the target. And a room full of frightened men with nothing left to lose does not wait quietly to find out. The following day, when Robespierre tried to speak again, the chamber erupted before he could finish a sentence. He was arrested by nightfall. In the early hours of the next morning, forces loyal to the convention stormed the building where Robespierre and his remaining allies had barricaded themselves. In the chaos, a bullet shattered his jaw. Whether it came from his own hand or a soldier's is still argued over by historians today. What isn't disputed is what happened next. He was dragged, bleeding and unable to speak, back to the same convention that had just condemned him. Less than 20 hours later, he was executed on the very scaffold he had sent so many others to. Maximilien Robespierre did not think of himself as a monster. Almost no one responsible for immense human suffering ever does. He thought of himself as the last honest man protecting something fragile and precious from people who wanted to destroy it. And for a while, enough people agreed with him that his certainty became law. The guillotine that ended his life on the 28th of July, 1794, was the same machine his own government had spent a year defending as an instrument of virtue. The lesson underneath all of this isn't really about revolutions or Paris or the 18th century. It's about what happens to anyone, in politics, in a family, in a friendship, inside their own mind. The moment they become fully convinced, they cannot be the problem. Robespierre never doubted himself until the room he built turned against him. By then, there was no version of the story where he survived it. The most dangerous certainty a person can carry is the one that feels like virtue. If this made you think differently, even for a moment. That's the whole point of this channel. New stories on ancient wisdom and the psychology behind it every week. Subscribe if you want to keep thinking clearly in a world that doesn't. This has been Memento Mori.